Natasha,
Debbie,
show.
the show.
Welcome to it. Just two patriotic girls.
Learning about the world.
So please, don't take us the wrong way.
Hi, welcome to the Natasha and Debbie show.
How you guys doing today? We're happy you're here. But are you? I don't know. One way we can find out is if you like our content and you hit that little fun, annoying, that we keep asking, like button.
And also consider subscribing to our channel. It's absolutely free.
So today, we're going to tackle one of the age-old questions in life. Example, how were the pyramids created?
What came first, the chicken or the egg?
In this situation, why haven't you hit that subscribe button? That's an age-old question too.
That is.
That was a good one.
By this point.
That was funny.
Good one.
But today we're going to be asking, why does the United Kingdom drive on the
left? That's
side?
right.
I'm sitting on the right side. She's on the left side. How the TV works with that, it'll look like that's wrong.
So we were looking at some stuff beforehand, and there are 76 countries that that drive on the left, and 163 that drive on the right.
What's up with that?
So why?
Yeah, why? We don't know.
Why that difference?
We've posed this question, if you will, a few times in other videos, and people have commented with all kinds of crazy things and things that we looked up and it just wasn't true, but we never actually found a true answer. So what is it? We don't know. But that's where today's video comes in. This is from Adventures in Naps, and if you haven't subscribed to her channel yet, again, another age-old question. Why not? That subscribe button's free for everybody, and it helps all the channels you watch on YouTube, guys. It helps so much. So it's just saying, hey, I like you, I'm bookmarking you, and I can find you next time. So Adventures in Naps. So she did this video, why does the UK drive on the left? And hopefully she's going to tell us. Now you'll find the link to her video in the description of this one. So without any further ado, we've been waiting long enough. It is, again, an age-old question.
It is.
Funny story. Debbie kept saying...
It could be an old age question.
She kept saying that.
Or
She's
an age-old question, whichever way you want to go with it.
This is our third take, because she kept saying, we're here to answer an old age question. On with the video.
Why do British people drive on the left when most of the world does the opposite? Honestly, I had no idea. Hi everyone, it's me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Alana and I'm a Canadian, but I have been living here in the UK for the last 7 years. I always want to know more about my second home here, why things are the way that they are, and the question came up, why do Brits drive on the left? And in that moment, I realized I literally have no idea. If you have a guess as to why Brits drive on the left, make sure to leave a comment down below. Without further ado, let's go. Now, before we can even consider talking about driving on the left, we have to talk about, quite simply, walking. And walking everywhere. Now, obviously, roads and paths were a thing long before cars were even a concept.
I believe we're on to something.
This idea of which side of the path you should walk on was an issue that people thought about. If we go back in time, if we rewind a little bit, the big fear when traveling, whether you were walking by yourself, with others, whatever, was violence, really. Getting mugged on the road. 0 out of 10, do not recommend. So typically, because most people were right-handed, they would tend to walk on the left because if you had some sort of weapon like a sword or something, you could pull it out with your right hand. The person that's attacking you would be on the right side, so it just made sense to pass people while you are walking on the left. So it seems that most people start out walking on the left.
Imagine living at a time where that's something you have to deal with.
Yeah, exactly.
Good Lord. Sir?
We just got to be prepared with that sword.
Yeah, something. That's just freaky. Glad we don't live in that time period.
And it's typically due to I don't want to get mugged situation, which is a little bit paranoid, but also it makes sense. This is also really helpful for people who rode horses. So again, most people are right-handed. When you are right-handed, it is easier to mount a horse from the left And you don't really want to be standing in the middle of traffic getting on and off the horse. So again, makes sense. You're on the left-hand side of the road, you mount the horse from the left, and you get off the horse from the left. Wonderful. So naturally, the Brits kept left. More and more horses and carriages and that kind of thing started to really clog British roads, that keeping left eventually became law. Now, the earliest one of these laws was in 1756, specifically for London Bridge, a very busy place. They really needed to keep the flow of traffic going. So that law came into effect.
We learned about that.
You
That
gotta
place
keep
was
left.
busy, wasn't it?
Shortly after this, in 1772, towns in Scotland followed suit. They also wanted to keep left. Legally. Okay. Legally keep left. And then finally, in 1835, for all of Great Britain and Ireland, it was law to keep left. Now, what about Britain's neighbors? So while Britain kind of off in its own little area decided to keep left, what was everybody else doing? In 1300, the Pope instructed pilgrims traveling to Rome should keep to the left. I guess he just decided. When you're a pope, you can do that. Now, it's also worth noting that while this story is repeated a lot, in all of the little research that I did, a little bit of a bing, this story comes up often. However, other sources indicate that the Pope instructed people to keep to the right instead, and there is no documentation to back up either claim.
Oh, okay.
Fun. Now, if we forget about the Pope for a second, okay, did he tell people keep left, keep right? That is for other people to figure out, not me. But I did find there is a study of ancient traffic in Pompeii, which is fascinating.
Really?
Now, this study showed that when people were traveling in Pompeii, carts, horses, whatever, they would choose to go down the middle of the road whenever possible. And this was the case even when the road was wide enough for 2 lanes. They would just prefer to take the middle. And apparently the wear on these stones as part of this research study showed that if it was wide enough for 2 lanes and it was busy enough for 2 lanes of traffic in Pompeii, people would keep to the right. And apparently this idea of people keeping right could be found in other parts of the Roman Empire. So,
interesting.
Keep left, keep right. What about just down the middle? And then Napoleon got involved. Did you expect this video to talk about Napoleon? Because
I didn't. But I'm loving this history.
Did you know Napoleon was left-handed? Because I did not. I don't know how well known that fact is, but I didn't know. Now, Napoleon liked to confuse his enemies, and during his conquests, he often instructed his armies to attack from the right, to ride their horses on the right, to do everything on the right in nations where keeping left was the norm. So Napoleon's European conquests forced these countries to make the switch to driving on the right. So places like Switzerland, Germany, Italy, Poland, Spain, Belgium, the Netherlands.
I knew that's why.
It's a long list. He was a busy man, apparently. Nations that resisted invasion, Great Britain, kept to the left.
True.
Now, over time, as countries were trying to figure out how to handle cars, what situation they want, left or right, they did find that countries with a border crossing where one country was still keeping left and the other country was now keeping right, they found it very difficult and very confusing for drivers passing between those countries.
Can you imagine?
No.
Can you imagine?
No. So my question to any of you out there watching, if you've driven in countries on the left and then been to countries that are on the right, did you find that complicated? Did you find that unnerving? Did you find it easy? And how fast did you acclimate yourself to that?
Good question.
I have been to one country where they've driven on the left, but I wasn't old enough to drive yet. You've never been?
I have not. Every place I've been, it's always been on the right.
Not yet, anyway. But she's gonna be the one driving us when we come to the UK.
But I'd be more than willing to try it and find out. How long does it take me to acclimate? Aren't you happy?
Please send help.
Czechoslovakia.
It's a tough one. Czechoslovakia. You got this.
Czechoslovakia.
I love it.
I don't even remember what I was supposed to say after that. I'm trying to say that word.
That was good
That
enough.
country and Hungary were two of the remaining keep left countries in mainland Europe. They didn't actually switch over to the right until Germany invaded in World War II. Now,
But why?
Sweden actually didn't switch from the left until the right until,
It was recent.
do you know what year?
1967.
1967.
I was going to say 70.
So it was very late. And if you
We
want
learned that.
something
It was
really
close.
confusing, Austria did both. Austria
What?
thought, you know what?
How do you do both?
How can we make this more difficult? Let's do both sides. Half of the country drove on the left, and the other
That makes more
half that
sense
was
than what I was
invaded
thinking.
by Napoleon drove on the right.
Okay, that's
Now,
hilarious. Napoleon had so
We
much
gotta
to
talk
this?
about Napoleon.
Sure did.
I did not expect this to be part of the story, but it's pretty important. If you
That's
Google,
fascinating.
why do people drive on the right? Why do people drive on the left? You will see the same regurgitated story about Napoleon dozens of times. Napoleon was left-handed. As part of his military strategy, he forced his people to attack from the right. All of the countries that he conquered, he forced them to go to the right and ultimately drive on the right. You will see this story over and over again. Whether it is a website article or a YouTube video, you will
Reddit.
see it over and over and over again. However, these stories often either don't have a source, they're just saying it,
That's what I
or
was thinking.
their source comes from another place regurgitating that story that doesn't have a source.
And so
Do you
on and
see
so
what I
on.
mean?
I
It's
do see what
just
you mean.
like a
Makes sense.
giant loop. So none of these sources I have seen, whether a YouTube video, whether a website, none of them have good sources. Most of them don't have a source at all. I have seen that this Napoleon story is a myth, although a popular myth, but a myth nonetheless. I just couldn't find any decent source that talks about this story with authority. Do you know what I mean? It's just everybody quotes it. Humble opinion from researching this. Perhaps there's a grain of truth there somewhere. Perhaps Napoleon did prefer people to start going on the right after he conquered them. Perhaps as transport was getting larger and larger, carriages getting larger and larger, and that sort of keeping left was no longer appropriate, and slowly countries started moving to the right just because the transport was different.
Okay.
Perhaps. And once a country switches to the right, particularly in Europe, there's a lot of moving across borders, things start to get confusing. Perhaps other countries start switching to the right. Just an idea. I would love to see an authoritative source for this Napoleon story.
I had a feeling. I've Googled it, and I didn't look at the Napoleon thing. It was a lot of the whole like like the weapon thing. But I did a quick Google. This was like a year ago.
Yeah.
When we first brought up the topic. But I love that she's honest about it, because I mean it is easy to go and find out, like, is that true? Let's check it out.
But you got to go deeper in the answers that you find to see
That's
if
the thing.
that's
People
legit.
don't. People
Exactly, they don't.
People tend to not go deeper to really get a source answer. And I wanted to do this video. I know there's another video that circulates around on YouTube that we have never watched. But I looked at the comments and asked a few people about it. And yeah, it was a no once I heard what I heard. But I felt like she was going to give us truth. And that's what we're getting here.
Yep.
Let's keep going.
If you can find it, send it to me. I'd love to read it.
Send
Anyway,
it to us
back
too. I want to
Europe.
see it.
Slowly, certain states in Austria started to switch to the right. They were trying to all come together and drive on the right. It wasn't until Hitler got involved that he forced the remaining states to switch to driving on the right literally overnight. When I
Whoa.
started looking into
Wow.
this topic, I did not think we were going to be talking about Napoleon and Hitler, and yet here we are.
I'm
Now,
not surprised.
Britain really liked to spread its rule around. Do you know what I'm saying? So a lot of British colonies also drove on the left. One thing that came about as part of
Australia.
this little research
Not
project
colony, but Commonwealth.
was I actually had no idea about my own homeland, Canada. What's the deal with Canada? I had no idea that Canada drove on the left until the 1920s, which isn't
we
even
too?
that long ago. Now, I did read in the
I don't know.
1700s, it became more custom to have like large scale wagons. So situations where there would be multiple horses pulling a massive wagon. And in particular in the US, this was really popular. And because there wasn't like a driver's seat in these types of wagons, the driver of said caravan thing would typically sit on the left horse at the back. And that meant, because again, most people are right-handed, he could whip the horses as part of this carriage wagon situation from the rear left horse. And because he was sitting on the left, he would want people to pass him on the left, which means he would keep right. And the rule of keeping right actually swept across the US around this time. We've got a couple of dates. Pennsylvania Turnpike, that was 1792. New York was 1804. New Jersey in 1813. And the rest of the US followed suit quite quickly, and everyone kept right. And once Henry Ford released that beautiful first ever Model T car in 1908, the steering wheel was on the left, and it stayed there ever since. Now, as Canada and the US became more and more intertwined, I imagine that it just made sense for Canada to forego this previous British idea of keeping to the left and switch to the right to match their partners to the south. Now, who is still driving on the left? And that is a good question. Currently, 4 countries in Europe still drive on the left-hand side. Do you know which ones?
I do not.
Guess now? Did you pick Great Britain, Republic of Ireland, Cyprus, and Malta? And of course, those last 2 are, guess what? British colonies. Currently, about 75 countries drive on the left, which honestly, a lot more than I thought. And I wrote this down. It accounts for about 1/6 of the world's land area, 1/4 of the world's roads, and about 1/3 of its population. Now, 1/3 of the world's population drives on the left. Is that a lot? I don't think so. When you say 75 countries, you're like, oh my God, really? But 1/3 of the world's population, you're kind of like, okay, I think that makes sense. Maybe that's just me. Now, so far it seems that a lot of people made the change from keeping to the left to ultimately driving on the right. But did anyone go the opposite route, starting out on the right and ending up on the left? And the answer is yes.
Really?
The Pacific island of Samoa made the switch from keeping to the right to keeping to the left.
Why?
Guess what year?
1936.
2009.
What?
The reason given was that they wanted to sort of fall in line with their neighbors, Australia and New Zealand, which, like Britain, drive on the left. Can we circle back to the Brits again real quick, if you don't mind? Now, 2 years after Sweden switched to the right, and if you remember, Sweden was quite late to the game switching. In 1969, the British government actually researched whether it would be feasible for Britain to also make the switch.
Really?
Okay, obviously you didn't do that. But question, would you hate that? You would hate that, wouldn't you? I would hate that if we switched to left. I would hate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, no, wouldn't like that.
Because, you know, it's all in what you know and what you're used to, and then to have to switch.
No.
That'd be way too hard.
Is there anyone here that would be, would prefer that? That's the question. Obviously, I think most of you would hate that idea.
I would think.
99.9% of you.
But you let us know.
Again, hate the idea of going to the left. No, thank you.
It'd be so...
It's just, yeah, like you said, you're used to it.
Yeah, it's just...
I'd be in a wreck in 5 minutes.
I think you'd survive.
I do not. She has a lot of faith in me that I don't have.
A lot of close calls, but I think you'd survive.
Who's driving when we visit other countries again?
Well, I am.
Why is that?
Well, because it's fun.
It's not entirely true.
Whether it would be feasible for Britain to also make the switch.
I didn't know
Ultimately, and if you live here and you're still driving on the left, you will know this suggestion, this report was ultimately rejected, mainly due to safety and cost. Safety.
I was just going to say, like, think about that, though. If we changed, like, all the cars would have to be rebuilt.
The cars that have to be rebuilt, the signs, the stoplights, I mean, everything.
Yeah, if you change, same thing. I mean, you could drive with the car steering wheel on one side and still stay or drive on the other side. You can.
That'd just be weird.
I've seen people here do it with imported vehicles.
Yeah, they have, but it's weird.
Hey, our mailman do it.
That is true.
You guys know that? Our mailman drive on the left. Not on the left.
Does that mean
They drive on the right side, but their steering wheel is on the right side.
yes?
Did you know that?
Being that for Britain's entire history, people have been keeping left, and it would be a huge culture change
Yeah.
to force everyone to
Don't
do
do
the
it.
opposite, but also, of course, cost. Now, in 1969, when they put together this report, they estimated that the financial burden of making the switch, guess?
How much?
Did you guess 264 million pounds?
I'm not surprised.
And guess how much that is in today's money?
About
Around 4 billion. So
Holy
they
shit.
saw that number and they thought, you know what? Maybe not. So what have I learned through this little mini
This is
research
fascinating.
project? I didn't realize that we would speak about Napoleon and Hitler. That was a surprise. I didn't realize that a lot of people blame Napoleon for the switch from the left to
Blame
the right.
him?
Whether that is factual or not, kind
No one
of
knows?
confusing. And if we do believe the sources that claim Napoleon is largely to blame, it's Britain's ability to fight him off means that they have stubbornly been able to keep left. And honestly, I don't think it'll ever change.
Well, that was very, very historical, and I love stuff like that, informational. And yet, I was right. There's no answer, real answer.
The question still remains: why?
Why?
And
Does it matter, though?
I don't think it does.
We just want to know something because it's different. That's what comes. That's what a lot of questions in life come down to. If something's different for you, you want to know the answer. I don't hear British people saying, "Hey, why does America and other countries drive on the right?" I don't hear anyone posing that question.
No.
No. Why is that?
And it's perfectly.
Yeah, it's not. One's not right.
Yeah, it's not right or wrong. It's what you're used to, and
Yeah.
hey, be different. It's fine.
Well-
We're different than you, and that's fine.
Yeah. I like the difference.
I do. I love the
Yeah.
differences.
If we're all the same, how boring is that?
Yeah.
Like, what's the
They're
fun in
fine.
visiting countries that everything would be the same? Same food, same
Same culture, same
yeah,
everything.
same blah 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 blah
Yeah.
blah blah. Same different YouTube channels that don't have, certain American girls. Hi, how you doing? If you like this episode, please hit that like button and consider subscribing to our channel. And again, and the link to the original video is in the description of ours for Adventures in Naps video. Thank her so much. Thank you for this episode. We appreciated it because I did find that really interesting, and I like that she didn't just throw up some random BS answer.
Standard answer that
Yeah.
everybody else gives.
Yeah. We hope that you guys enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Natasha and Debbie Show. Until then, please love like jazz.
And be as strong as Tyson.
Bye, guys.
Bye.